Page 976, bottom of the page. We were doing Shakespeare's sonnet. I believe this is number 130. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. And when we left off, we were talking about this being an anti-blazon, where blazon means a catalog of beauty. So, talk about eyes, lips, nose, cheeks, etc. And I think we've done the first two quatrains. Yeah, because I mentioned, my two favorite lines in pretty much in all of Shakespeare are those. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. Whenever you use that verb reek, what does it always imply? Louder? What kind of smell?
Bad.
Bad. It's always bad. It's never the smell of a rose. It's never the smell of a wonderful dinner cooking. It's always, you're walking along the road or whatever, and you come across roadkill, and it's been there a few days. It's that kind of smell. It's horrible, rancid smell. Okay? So, we get to the last quatrain. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. This is an example of, I'm trying to remember if this term has shown up or not. I think it has. This is an example of litotes, which is understatement. Or if you want, severe understatement. Right? So what does he mean? Music hath a far more pleasing sound than her voice. So what is he saying about her voice? It's not good. Are any of you familiar? I know the show's been off the air for a long time, and I never watched it because I couldn't stand it. The old TV sitcom, The Nanny, Fran Drescher, talks like this. Everything is nasal. That's kind of what Shakespeare is getting at, okay? Or the speaker of the poem, I should say, is getting at. Because in traditional sonnet sequences, when a guy is writing about his beloved, she has the voice of an angel, the voice of a goddess. Well, this one doesn't. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground, okay? This speaker says, I never saw a goddess go. Why? Because, again, he's using the Petrarchan images, okay? And in traditional sonnet sequences, the speaker's beloved, the woman, is described as a goddess. Usually Venus or Aphrodite. One of those two, okay? So he says, I never saw a goddess go. My girlfriend isn't a goddess. Why? She walks on the ground. In Shakespeare, might be playing with the idea here that she is, to use an old term, a streetwalker, a hooker. Ah. My girlfriend's, what? She's real. That is, she puts out. She's not like these made-up goddesses these other guys are all talking about, okay? And then he gives us his conclusion, the final couplet. And yet, by heaven is an oath. He's swearing, by God in heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. And is any she, your gloss tells you, as any lady, that is, as any other woman described in sonnet sequences. Okay? My love is as rare as any she belied, that is, lied about with false comparison. These other guys are writing sonnets, okay, about their girlfriends, about their beloveds, and they are falsely comparing them with these goddesses and such. This speaker says, I'm not. Why? Mine's real. Mine's real. When I go home at night, she's there waiting for me. I don't have to curl up with some poem that I've written about to make me feel warm and cuddly. Okay? Pretty different idea compared to the other sonnet sequences of the period. Okay, so go from there to, I think that is pretty much almost the last of the terms. We're going to have just a couple more. Page 982 of Villanelles. Okay, we're talking about poetic form. So those were sonnets. Villanelles. Sonnets they're not that hard to write because they're mostly written in iambic pentameter. Some are written in blank verse, but they're mostly written in iambic pentameter. They have a set rhyme scheme, so you know what you have to do at the ends of lines. Villanelles are really hard, okay? Villanelle, fixed form, 19 lines of any length, that is, the number of syllables don't matter, doesn't have to be pentameter, okay? So 19 lines, 6 stanzas, and the 6 stanzas are made up this way. 5 tercets, that is 5 3-line stanzas, okay, and a concluding quatrain. The first and third lines of the first tercet, the first 3-line stanza, rhyme, okay? And then these rhymes, not the words, the sounds, the rhymes are repeated in each of the following 3-line stanzas, that is the tercets, and in the final 2 lines of the quatrain. That's why I said, this is a difficult form to write, okay? Moreover, that is, as if that's not bad enough, the first line appears again completely unchanged, that is exactly as it was, in lines 6, 12, and 18, while the third line reappears again as lines 9, 15, and 19. So you got to keep all of that, in order. And you have probably the greatest example of a villanelle with this next poem by Dylan Thomas, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. Dylan Thomas died when he was 39. He was a drunk. And he died from alcoholism. If he hadn't been a drunk, some people would say we probably wouldn't get a poem like this. Okay? But he probably would have written a lot more poems than he did. You might have seen, or if you haven't, look for it on, TV coming up soon. There's usually a show on, and not necessarily on the networks, but it's available. It might even be on YouTube, called A Child's Christmas in Wales, written by Dylan Thomas, about his childhood. Okay? I think it's about his childhood. It's been a long time since I've seen it. So this is 1952, a year before he dies. One of the all-time great 20th century poems. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So notice how you get the first line as line 18, and then you get the third line again as line 19. So let's go back. What does the first line mean or imply? Well, let me back up. Remember the poem Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost? What were some of the possible meanings we discussed for night? Death, sorrow, depression. So, do not go gentle into that good night. He's not talking about just going to sleep. He's talking about the long night, the sleep of death. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Close of day, what is that? That's the beginning of the night. Old age should do what? This speaker says, when it sees death approaching, fight against it. Do everything you can to forestall it. Don't go, how? Gentle. Now we're going to read another poem in a few days. It's going to argue exactly the opposite. So, rage against the dying of the light. That is, the end of the day, the end of one's life. Though implies what? Little shift. Though wise men at their end know dark is right. Who are the wise men here? These aren't like the three wise men at Jesus' birth. Wise men know what? At their end, dark is right. What does that mean? What are the two constants in life? Death and taxes. Everyone knows what? You gotta die. Those are the wise men. Those who say, I can cheat death, they're fools. In fact, I would add, they're damn fools. Because nobody cheats death. So, though wise men at their end know dark is right, that is, it has to happen, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. What does that forked no lightning mean? Okay. How does lightning usually appear? It forks. Okay. Their words had forked no lightning. That is, their words had caused no lightning. Well, what does lightning do in a night sky?
Lights it up.
It lights it up. Their words do what? Do they tell you about death? What does Hamlet call death? The undiscovered country from whose bourne no one returns. That is, their wise words, they don't tell us anything else. So what do? They do not go gentle. That is, they know they have to die. It doesn't mean they go willingly. They fight against it. Good men, so notice, second stanza, wise men. Third stanza, good men. The last wave by. Is that wave like this? Or is it the last wave of men? Like, an invasion force. My uncle was on the initial wave of the invasion of Okinawa in World War II. Okay? What does that mean? It means you have one group, and right behind that, another group, and behind that, another group. So, good men, the last wave by, that is, the last set gone, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Frail deeds. Why are their deeds frail? They don't last. Why might they have danced in a green bay? Well, he might be talking about something that wins applause, wins awards. He might be talking about things that they did in their youth that don't do what? Don't buy them any additional time. So what do? They rage against the dying of the Wild men, so wise men, good men, wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight. What does the speaker in Marvell's to his coy mistress say at the end of the poem? To his mistress, though we cannot make the sun stand still, yet we will make him run. Those are the wild men. Those are the men who live life how? Man, they just live fully. They do what Henry David Thoreau said we ought to do in his little book, Walden. They suck all the marrow out of life so that when they're dead or dying, they're done. They're spent. Okay? They do what? They caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late. They grieved it on its way. They don't go gentle into that good night. Grave men. Near death, notice the pun there. Grave, like in their grave, or grave, serious men. Solemn men. Why? Because they're near death. They realize that's not a time to be flippant. They do what? They see with blinding sight. What do they see? Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. So what do they see? What happens to some people on their deathbed? What do they say about their past life? If only I had. That's why Thoreau, in that book, Walden, said, when I approach death, I want to be able to say, I sucked all the marrow out of life. I really lived. Okay? And you, my father. So, which is his father? Is his father a wise man, a good man, a wild man, or a grave man? Or is he kind of a mix of all of them? And you, my father, there on the sad height. What's the sad height? Overlooking the abyss. The abyss is death. The speaker seems to be saying his father is about to take his last breath. Do what? Curse, bless me. I don't care. What's he saying? Do something. Don't what? Curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. That is, don't just drift off. Don't just drift away. Let me know when your last breath is. Okay? Go from there to, now we're going to skip that kind. 987, epigrams. Epigrams are fun. Brief, pointed, witty poem. No prescribed form. So you got a little one by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. What is an epigram? What is an epigram? A dwarfish whole. Its body brevity and wit its soul. Well, I like the next one better. By A.R. Emmons. Coward. Bravery runs in my family. Okay, notice the wit there, because bravery shouldn't run, right? It's just a great little poem. Bravery runs in my family. Next page. Limericks. Yeah, I know what limericks are. You got a whole bunch there. Limericks can be real fun. Limericks always get popular again around election times because smart-assy people will make up limericks about, various candidates and stupid things they do. Okay, page 990, Elegy. Lyric poem written to commemorate someone who's dead. And you've got, I want to do that one. I'm trying to see if it's on the syllabus. You've got Ben Johnson's On My First Son, which I don't think is on the syllabus, but I've got it highlighted. So I'm going to skip it. Turn to 994, an ode. So I do want you to know what an elegy is. Ode, serious topic, formal tone, no prescribed pattern. Okay? And we have a long one here that we'll go ahead and do. Ode to the West Wind. Okay? By Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was married to, anybody know? Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. And probably influenced it. Because Shelley was a bit of a jerk. So we get this 5-stanza ode. What's it about? O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence-stricken multitudes. O thou who chariotest to their dark wintry bed. The winged seeds where they lie, O thou who chariotest to their dark wintry bed, the winged seeds where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion o'er the dreaming earth, and fill driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in air, with living hues and odors plain and hill. Wild spirit which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, hear, oh hear. So he's talking to the wind, the west wind. He alludes to the east wind. The west wind is a harbinger of fall. The east wind, what's called Zephyrus, is a harbinger of spring. Stanza 2. Thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean, angels of rain and lightning. There are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm. Thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre, vaulted with all thy congregated might of vapors, from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. Oh, hear! So both stanzas conclude with the invocation, oh, hear, listen to me. Okay? The ode is really what? It's a prayer. He's praying to the wind to do something. Thou who didst waken from his summer dreams the blue Mediterranean, where he lay lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams, beside a pumice isle in Baiae's bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers, so sweet the sense faints picturing them. Thou, for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasms, while far below the sea blooms in the oozy woods, which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice, and suddenly grow gray with fear, and tremble and despoil themselves. Oh, hear. So, thou, now, if. Conditional. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. If I were a swift cloud, to fly with thee. A wave to pant beneath thy power, and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable. If even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade by thy wanderings over heaven, as then, when to outstrip thy skyey speed scarce seemed a vision, I would ne'er have striven as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need, So, if, then. So if I could do this, then I wouldn't have striven with you in prayer. Why is he striving in prayer? He has some kind of sore need, some kind of great need. Lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life. I bleed. The thorns of life, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that Hamlet talks about. Okay? The heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. A heavy chain of hours? I'm growing old. And what's it done? Age has bowed me. That is, has bowed my body. But I, the soul that inhabit the body, am what? Tameless, swift, proud. Stanza 5. Make me thy lyre. I put up here the other day and the words Aeolian harp or Aeolian lyre. It's a Greek thing, okay? And it's a kind of instrument, a musical instrument that produces music by the wind blowing through it. So, make me your lyre. Blow through me, even as the forest is. Have you ever been in a forest in a big windstorm? It's totally awesome. Been in the redwoods when big windstorms have hit. Gotta be careful though, because those suckers fall. Yeah, they take out everything. What if my leaves are falling like its own? That is, like the forest's own. So what are a person's leaves? Hair? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both, from me, from the forest, a deep autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness. Be thou, spirit fierce, my spirit. Be thou me, impetuous one. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. Well, how can your thoughts be driven over the universe? Well, if the thoughts are like leaves, look out the window, and the wind's blowing, the leaves blow. So how can thoughts, which are intangible, take on some kind of tangible form? Shakespeare says in that one sonnet, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" He ends it with, "So long as men live and have eyes to see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee." What's the this? This poem. What are his thoughts? His poems. The west wind can blow his poems across the universe, per se. And do what? Quicken a new birth. And by the incantation of this verse, scatters from an unextinguished heart ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. So what happens when the wind blows embers? This is one of the problems out west with forest fires. It spreads the fire. So if his thoughts, his poems are like embers, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth, ashes and sparks, which are my words among mankind. Be through my lips to unawakened earth. What's the earth? Us. Unless we hear the poet's words, the poet is saying, we're asleep. We're not awake. Thoreau, again, in Walden, said, the mass of men, that is, the mass of common humanity, live lives of quiet desperation, not fully awake. Why? Why does he say that? Because Thoreau argued most people don't fully become aware of what life is. Why? They get up, they go to work, they come home, they go to sleep. They get up, they go to work, they come home, they go to sleep. They've been turned, even though he didn't have this term, they've been turned into robots. And they don't really live. So, be through my lips to unawakened earth, the trumpet of a prophecy. What's the prophecy? O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Is he talking about like us, we're getting ready for winter? Chance of snow next week, by the way. Literally, chance of snow next week. So, is he talking about literal fall and winter and spring? No. What does winter become an image of? We already talked about what night is an image of. Well, winter is the same thing. As night is the end of day, winter is the end of the year. They're both images of death. He is saying, if winter comes, what? Spring must also come. That is, he's implying, he's not saying, death isn't the end. It's what? It's when the seeds from the trees get put in the ground, and what happens? They're reborn. We don't know what kind of reborn, what kind of rebirth, okay? Parody. Oh, shit. I meant to bring a copy of a poem, and we haven't done the other one. I've got it later for the 30th. We'll do it then. Parody. You all know what a parody is. It's The Onion online. It's Babylon Bee, which I think now outdoes The Onion in terms of its parody. It used to be Saturday Night Live, but Saturday Night Live is just idiotic now. It's no longer good. So you have an example of a parody on 997, The Lover Not Taken. Why? It's a parody of Robert Frost's poem, which we'll be reading sometime in the next week or two. Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. We're going to read in a few weeks or in a few days Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. And then I'm going to bring in a handout of a parody of it titled The Dover Bitch. Okay? Because in the Dover Beach, you've got a guy who takes a girl down to a hotel on Dover Beach overlooking the English Channel at the French coast and such. Okay? 997, picture poem. Know what that is. You've got an example there. 998. Let's see, what else? Chapter 31, page 1000, free verse, open form. You got a partial example, 1001, Walt Whitman's I Sing the Body Electric. Let's see here. Red Wheelbarrow, we've done. Okay, let's go on nothing else there. So, go to 1025. Wait, do I want to do that yet? No, let's go to, so we've done this to make much of time. Done that. Valediction for being. No, let's turn back to, now we're going to go back to actual poems assigned on the syllabus for, let's say, October 24th. Valediction Forbidding Morning, page 882. Because we did, do not go gentle into that good night. And he talks about good men passing, quietly and such, and then says they rage against the night. Let's look at this one by John Donne. Page 882, Valediction Forbidding Morning. A little bit of background about Donne. Donne was a 17th century poet. I don't want to give you too much background. 17th century poet who got married, born in 1572, got married in 1600 when he was 26 and his wife was if I'm remembering correctly, 16 or 17. Okay? He met her 3 years previously when she was 13 or 14. And that's when their relationship started. Okay? When they get married, the marriage is secret. Dunn at that point is secretary to the second most powerful person in England. Okay? The keeper of the seal is what this guy was called. And the girl was this guy's niece. Dunn meets her. They fall in love. They secretly marry when she is 16. And a couple things immediately happen. One, Dunn is fired. Two, he's thrown in jail, where he stays for 3 months. Her father is an important man in his own right. And he pretty much becomes unemployed for quite a while. Okay? But in the meantime, he's writing poems and such. Now, this poem is thought to probably have been written to his wife shortly before he goes on a trip to the continent. That is, he leaves England with his new employer and goes to the continent and is going to be writing letters and correspondence and that stuff, kind of stuff for him. It's a valediction. Every one of you graduated from high school and your graduating class had a valedictorian or 20. Seems like, you know. When I was in school, you had one valedictorian. That's it. You might have 10 people with 4.2 GPAs and they're all, you know, extremely athletic and involved in all kinds of activities. Guess what? The principal decided one valedictorian, not, you know, participation awards for everybody, which is how it seems like today. So, it's a valediction. What does that mean? It's a saying farewell. It's a saying goodbye. Okay? This is the valediction forbidding mourning. Dunn writes 3 valedictions. A valediction forbidding mourning, a valediction forbidding weeping, and I can't remember the third one. Okay? My dissertation was on Dunn. So, as virtuous men pass mildly away and whisper to their souls to go, while some of their sad friends do say, the breath goes now, and some say no, so let us melt. So, as, ... so. What is that? What kind of figure of speech is that? It's a simile. So he gives us a simile to begin with. As virtuous men die how? Silently. They don't give any indication just before their death. Okay? So that people are going, is he dead? I don't know. Get the stethoscope out. Hold a mirror up to his mouth. See if he's breathing. So let us melt. And make no noise. No tear floods, nor sigh tempests move. Those are Petrarchan images from Petrarch sonnets. Okay? "'Twere profanation of our joys to tell the laity our love." Dunn's drawing a distinction here between, in the church, what are called the clergy and the laity. The clergy are the people who are the initiates, who do or perform services, preachers, etc. The laity are the people out there who receive, hear, and listen. Okay? So, it would be a profanation. That is, it would be making profane our joys. To do what? To tell the people out there of our love. Well, how would they be telling the people out there of our love? If they're weeping and mourning and getting ready to separate. Like standing at a train station or a train stop, and one's getting ready to board the train. It's just kind of like, let's just quietly, shake hands and we each go our way. Rather than, oh, no, you're going to see you, that kind of thing. Moving of the earth brings harms and fears, right? What would happen if the new Madrid fault were to rip today? Anybody know where the new Madrid fault is? It kind of goes right down the Mississippi from about New Madrid, Missouri, to northern Mississippi. If it ripped, and I mean ripped, if it did the big one, like it did in 1811, 1812, when it made the Mississippi flow north, first of all.
Is that the Reelfoot Lake one?
Yeah, it's the one that created the lakes over in West Tennessee. Okay? If it were to rip, we would feel it here. If it were to rip right now, I'd get knocked to the ground. And I've been in 6.4 magnitude earthquakes. I'm from California. Okay? You learn to roll with them. You wouldn't roll with that one. In fact, Peck Hall would probably, please God, get destroyed. Ugly building. So, moving of the earth does what? Brings harms and fears. Men reckon what it did and meant. That is, why did it happen? They didn't understand tectonic, movements then. But trepidation of the spheres does what? Though greater far is innocent. What is he talking about, trepidation of the spheres? He's talking about the Ptolemaic conception of the universe, which has Earth at the center, and around the Earth you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spheres. Outside that last sphere, you have what's called the Empyrean. This is where God dwells. Okay? So here's Earth. Then you have the moon. The moon is actually not one of the spheres. You've got these spheres. Each one of these spheres has essentially a ruling intelligence, something that guides and directs that sphere. Think of the spheres as glass balls, getting larger, larger, larger. They move. Okay? And when they move, they produce a sound. It's called the music of the spheres. And if you were to hear this music, you would immediately die and be with God in heaven. Why? It would be so beautiful, you wouldn't be able to live. So, this is the basis of what? You can pick up the Tennessean today, or the Daily News Journal, I don't know where it is, but it's there. You can read your blank for today, your horoscope, which is based upon astrology. Astrology is based upon this idea. Why? Because which of the spheres and the planet that inhabits that sphere is dominant at your birth will determine the kind of person you are. After all, we've all heard the phrase, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Okay? But you can also be from, so to speak, Saturn, okay, or Uranus, or Neptune, etc. So, trepidation of the spheres, the moving of these, he says, that's a lot greater than earthquakes. Why? Well, Jupiter's a hell of a lot bigger than we are. And so when Jupiter moves, there's a much greater movement than the Earth down here shaking. But, he says, the movement is what? Innocent to us. Why? Look at the date of the poem, 1611. In 1610, a famous astronomer published his findings. His findings said, this is wrong. His findings said to earlier astronomers, Kepler and Copernicus, actually 3, and Tycho Brahe, they were right. Because they said the Earth isn't the center of the universe. Okay, this is also called the geocentric idea. They said the heliocentric. The sun is the center, not of the universe, but the solar system. This astronomer Galileo. What happened immediately to Galileo? The Catholic Church said, Why? Because that cast into doubt this idea that humanity is the pinnacle of God's creation. You know, the earth is the center and we're the greatest thing there. Okay? So, Dunn is saying in 1611, this is right. This is wrong. Why? There might be greater movement here, but what? It doesn't matter to us. Astrology is a bunch of nonsense. Dull sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense, cannot admit absence because it doth remove those things which elemented it. Okay? So here's Earth. Here's the orbit of the moon. The moon is called what? Luna. So sublunary is everything from the orbit of the moon down to here. In Dunn's day, everything between the orbit of the moon down to here was said to be mutable, changeable, impermanent. Everything outside that, all of this, permanent. Didn't change other than that motion. Okay? So, comets, meteors, they all came from down here. So, dull, sublunary lovers love. So if their love exists only here, then what is one of its qualities? It's changeable. It's impermanent. I love you today, but I might not love you tomorrow. Why? Because she's prettier. Or he's hotter. Dull sublunary lovers love, whose soul is sense. That is, the soul, the essence of dull sublunary lovers love is what? Sensory perception. Okay? It's how she looks. It's how she feels. It's how she tastes. It's how she sounds. It's how she smells. Okay? Cannot admit absence. Why? Because if she leaves, what happens to my sensory perception of her? There is none. So what does it do? It finds somebody else. So the old either Stephen or Elvin Bishop song from the 1970s, if you can't love the one you love, anybody know how the rest of the line goes? Love the one you're with. Okay? Absence doth remove those things which elemented it. But we, the speaker is saying, we aren't dull sublunary lovers. We, by love so much refined, purified, that ourselves know not what it is. Why do you love me? I don't know. I just do. Enter assured of the mind. Their love is what? It's up here. It's not like Marvell's speaker and To His Coy Mistress down there. 30,000 to the rest. We care less eyes, lips, and hands to miss. Our two souls, therefore, which are one. Why are there two souls one? The Christian marriage vows. And the two shall become one. It's in Genesis. Our two souls, therefore, which are one, though I must go, endure not yet a breach, but an expansion, like gold to airy thinness beat. What kind of metal is gold, other than rare and valuable? What? Louder. Malleable. It's malleable. That is, it can be pounded, it can be bent, it can be shaped. Gold, if you wanted to, could be pounded thin enough to replace the glass in those windows. You'd be able to see through it. It'd have a slightly goldish tinge to it. So he says, our love is what? It's like gold. Or our soul is like gold. It can be expanded. It can be stretched. Okay, so the implication is maybe the person hearing this kind of goes like, yeah, right, buddy. Okay, if they're two, he says, they're like stiff twin compasses. Stiff twin compasses is referring to the kind of compass you use to make a circle out of. Okay? So, my leg, my soul, her leg, her soul. Thy soul, the fixed foot, makes no show to move, but doth if the other do, right? So if the compass is like this, they're both upright. So what happens if this one comes out this way? Well, can you inscribe a circle like this? No, you can't, because where's this tip? It's off the paper. So what does it have to do? What just happened? Thy leg, thy soul, has done what? Bend. It has, to use Dunn's language, it leans and hearkens after it. And grows erect as that one comes home. That is, and as this one comes back, this one straightens up. So, such wilt thou be to me, who must, like the other foot, obliquely run. Thy firmness makes my circle just, and makes me end where I begun. You have to stay here. Why? The speaker is saying, because if you don't, I will lose my way back. It's your fixedness here that draws me back. Okay? So, notice what Dunn has done in that poem. Compared their love to what? A compass. That's pretty weird. That is what is called a metaphysical conceit. Okay? It is a yoking together, a comparison of two wildly dissimilar things. We're going to read another poem by Dunn. Not today, because we're out of time. We're going to read another poem by Dunn on page 1348. We'll do this first thing on Friday, called The Flea. We're each going to compare their love to a flea.